Yes, I think for this conflict, this is the bottom. We have very strong support at that 30,000, the current levels, and go higher. Obviously, Putin is now just trying to prepare his legacy, right? He's worried or he's planning to reunite the Russia that he knew when he was a KGB officer, the USSR. I was born when Ukraine was part of the USSR. And he's willing to sacrifice lives. He's willing to go and change regimes for that. And that's what we're seeing right now happening in the Ukraine. Unfortunately, the West is not willing to commit people on the ground. They're only willing to commit economic, sanctions on Russia. And but I think what's going to come out of this is that the West is going to unite because of these actions. Countries that thought that they could run on their own are going to realize that they need the West, and especially the United States, much more than they thought before. And because of that, you will see a strengthening of the dollar, and you effectively seeing an extension of the empire, the United States empire, and the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world. These events are empowering the West, empowering the United States, and all of that is obviously good for America. Putin's source of power is high energy prices. And until we deal with that, until we actually create more energy, either by creating a safe nuclear power, by putting more renewables, by allowing drilling and other types of fossil fuels, we are effectively not going to solve the problem. And the Ukraine is just the first country. Just to remind everybody that Hitler also tried to unite all the German people and invaded several countries with exactly the same argument that Putin is doing in the Ukraine. So if we want to solve the Putin problem, we need to lower energy prices. And to do that, we need to basically allow much more competition, allow much more development of different energy sources that will bring down the price of oil. So we've seen basically that all of this is already priced in. The indexes were down. I think the Dow was down 800 points. And obviously, we recovered most of that during the day. That tells you that the stock market already accepts the overthrow of the regime in the Ukraine as a fait accompli. And because of that, I don't see the rest of this cascading of events in the Ukraine as having any additional impact. So I do expect the price of Bitcoin and the stock market indexes, those will be the lows to measure against for the next few months. The conflict doesn't really affect Apple or Google or any of the companies that are leading the charts in the stock market. And because of that, I think we've seen the bottoms. Yeah, so definitely, I think Bitcoin has not detached itself from the main markets, right? If you think about the stock market, if you think about a man walking his dog, right? His pup, the pup is on a leash. The pup is trying to break out and run away, and the pup is Bitcoin, and the man walking is the stock market. The stock market still controls Bitcoin, right? And until we see a decoupling or see the pup break away, we're going to see those two markets go together. The marginal buyer or seller of Bitcoin is the same person trading Tesla or trading Apple or other things. And so basically the institutions and the hodlers in the crypto community are not the one dictating the price, but the marginal buyer or seller. And there are just too many of those people. You don't have that institutional support that you have in traditional markets. So I think it might take another few years for us to see that decoupling. But when we see it, you're basically going to start seeing that Bitcoin behaving as a safety asset rather than the correlated asset to the stock market. So by invading the Ukraine, Russia effectively put at risk or they created a lot of uncertainty with global activity, meaning every CEO of every company now has to think about, well, what if Russia invades another country? What if Russia is in a prolonged war in the Ukraine and the US has to intervene or the NATO has to intervene and so on? So all these things create uncertainty. They create less willingness of banks and financial institutions to lend. That slows down the world's economy. And that's exactly what the Fed and other countries' central bank were trying to achieve. They thought that we were running too hot, right? And that's why they're going to raise rates. So it doesn't mean they're not going to raise rates. It just means that instead of 7 raises that we were expecting, many were expecting this year, we're probably now down to 3 or 4 raises, which is going to get us to that 1.5% to 2% level. And the Fed is probably going to stop there instead of going higher.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine could push energy prices up even higher, above $100 a barrel for oil. That might in turn make inflation go higher, which is going to prompt the Fed to raise rates more quickly. Because if inflation doesn't go down from 7.5%, if energy goes up, inflation goes up to 8 or 9%, they have to raise rates, right?
So oil is a much more flexible commodity, meaning Saudi Arabia can add 2 million barrels pretty easily if they wanted to. The United States can add 2 million barrels if they wanted to. Remember, when we stopped fracking, when we stopped exploring, we capped all those wells, right? It's not like we basically buried all of that, right? So we can actually bring back a lot of more production, which already is happening with the old saying, the cure for high oil prices are high oil prices. So we're there right now. I think the United States should release some of the petroleum reserves that we have to basically put a lot of pressure on Russia in a massive way, right? We should release maybe 100 million barrels or something like that, just to show Putin that we can hurt him where it hurts the most. And unfortunately, again, we're looking at sanctions instead of looking at curing the source of all this evil, which is high oil prices.
How is that going to affect Bitcoin? People are talking about the US dollar potentially competing with Bitcoin as reserve currencies. Down the line, if the dollar strengthens, would that be bad for Bitcoin?
Well, I don't really agree with the people that think that Bitcoin competes with the dollar. Bitcoin has its own adoption curve. The number of people adding or exploring or joining Bitcoin is increasing every day. And it's just going to take a long time for the crypto community to get to 1 billion people. It's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yes.
But the fact that you have capped supply, there's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin, and you have growing demand, basically tells you that over a long period of time, the price of Bitcoin is going to increase. So if right now the prices are low at $35,000, that's a great time to average in and add to your position. That's what I'm doing. And you just have to be patient. And over time, the price of Bitcoin will increase because more and more people are going to use it. Yes, I think for this conflict, this is the bottom. We have very strong support at that 30,000, the current levels, and go higher. Because again, all the people that were on leverage got flushed out. All the traders who wanted to get out, considering the bad news, already sold.
Yeah.
Crypto does not have as much leverage as people think. When those people sell, there's only buyers who are left, and that's where prices will go higher.